Alright everybody, welcome back. This is part 3 of the processing tutorial, and we're going to do a little bit of review here before we jump into some new material. So let's take a look at what we got. So last time we made setup and draw, and we used different functions in order to draw an ellipse to the screen. So if I were to run this code right here, what I have, I'm going to get this green background with this. Now maybe the background color is different from what you have, whatever you chose. I right here have these 3 parameters and I chose full green. I'm going to talk about this again in just a minute. But before we do that, I just want you to quiz yourself. How many functions are we using in this program? Alright, if you answered 5, you're correct. We have 2 functions that we've made, void draw and void setup. These are functions that they start with a curly brace and they end with a curly brace. Okay, so these are functions that are actually part of our program. Now there's functions that are outside of our program that are part of processing, and these are functions that we use in order to do things. So one of those functions is size and the others are background and ellipse. So you're going to notice a difference. There's a difference between functions that we make. They have something here that's telling us the return value, and then they have curly braces that wrap everything that is done inside that function between them. So notice how this brace is here and this brace is here. These functions though, these are functions that are part of processing that we're using, and this is the difference between creating a function and calling a function. So when you call a function, you write the function's name and you use these parentheses here, and then you end the line with a semicolon. So the semicolon is a way of telling processing that we're finished doing something and we can just move on to the next command. So here it says, alright, I've done the background. Alright, I'm no longer thinking about the background. I go to the next line and alright, now I'm going to draw an ellipse. So it calls the function background, takes these 3 parameters, calls the function ellipse and takes these 4 parameters, and then it ends. Okay, so when you're calling background, we also talked about one other thing. These 3 numbers are very important because they are the red, green, and blue colors. And as I said before, you're going to be using these a lot. So you really want to get in the habit of thinking in RGB values. The lowest RGB you could have is 0, and the max you can have is 255. And as I said before, red, green, blue. So if I put 255 here and I run this, what you're going to end up with is the exact same window we had before, but the background is going to be all red. All right, and these parameters, do you remember what these 2 parameters stood for? These are the width and the height of the screen, and then ellipse is 4 parameters, where the first is x, the second is y, and this is the width and the height. Alright, and remember also that the screen, when you have it, this is your 0, 0 up in the top left, and the x goes across like normal, and the y as you go down gets bigger. Alright, now you're probably wondering, like, oh, do I have to remember all this stuff? This is a lot of stuff to remember. I'm never going to be able to do that. Well, thankfully, if you jump over to the processing website, there is a really nice section that tells you all about all the different commands and all the different functions that you can use. And if you look here, you can see the background. That's what we used before. Oh, by the way, this is at reference, so processing.org/reference. There's a bunch in here. There's lots of things, and we're going to cover a lot of this stuff later on. So under 2D primitives, there's the ellipse. That's what we use. So let's go ahead and take a look at ellipse, and we'll see what it shows for us here. We're also going to take a look at point, because we're going to use that function in just a minute. And we're going to take a look at rect, which stands for rectangle, and we're going to do that in just a second. Alright, so ellipse, notice it gives you this example, and then it draws it right here for us. So it's really nice. It also will tell you what the parameters are. So notice it says A, B, C, D. It gives you exactly what the parameters are, and then it gives you a few other things that are related to that. So if you need help or if you can't remember how something works, just head over, go to the reference, and look it up. Alternatively, you can just type into Google processing, how do I draw a something, and then it will help you with it. Alright, so let's look at two other functions just to practice using functions, and we'll also use the document to kind of figure out what they do. Alright, so let's take a look at point first. So these are two examples for point. Point, all it does is just draw a single pixel on the screen. So let's take a look here. It just says point 3020. Now it says something no smooth here. We're going to see if we actually need that or not. We probably don't, depending on how things are set up. But let's check it out. Alright, so I have a red background, and I've drawn my ellipse. So let's draw a point now. Let's draw a point at 100, 100. And let's go ahead and run our program. Now, you're probably not going to be able to see it on my screen just due to the resolution on YouTube, but you should be able to see on your screen there's a little black dot at 100 and 100. Okay, so if you want to draw some more dots, you can copy this, and I'll kind of draw a few more and see if I can get what resembles a line coming down. Okay, so I'll just copy these, and then maybe you'll be able to see it on my screen, maybe not. It's interesting. Alright, there we go. Yeah, you might be able to see that now. A couple little black dots right there. Okay. Alright, so let's go check out another function here. Let's check out rectangle. Rectangle works similar actually to the ellipse. You have first syntax here is A, B, C, D, so it says the X and Y coordinates and then the width and the height. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do rectangle, and let's put it at 200, 200, and let's make it 50 and 50. So this is actually going to draw a square for us because I've had my width as 50 and my height as 50. Okay, so if I do this, I should get popped up down here, sorry. I should get a square on top of my ellipse. So that's another thing you're going to notice about the way this is drawing, is it paints the background, and it then draws the ellipse, then it draws all 4 points, and then it draws the rectangle. So the order that you draw in is very important. If you draw something like the ellipse, say I put the ellipse after my rectangle, and I run this again, what you're going to get is the ellipse is going to be drawn on top of the rectangle. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're drawing things. Sometimes you might think something has disappeared, but it could be just the order that you drew it in over here. Alright, so that is pretty important. Now, you can also erase stuff with the background. So let's say I drew my rectangle, and let's 150, I'm just going to pick some random numbers here. If I do this, what's actually going to happen is it's going to only draw the ellipse because it's drawing all of this stuff. First it draws a red background, it draws all this stuff, draws the rectangle, and then the background paints over everything with this green color. And then whatever I do after that will be drawn on top. Alright, so that's a really important point, is making sure how you're clearing the screen using background and the order you're drawing things in is really important. Alright, so I highly encourage you to go through and look at some of these other things and try to play with them and see what they do. There's a lot of really good examples in here. The processing website, the libraries and the tutorials and different things like that, they're all pretty well documented, and if you can't find something on the site, you can go to Google and search around. There's different forums that have information on processing. Alright, so that's about it. When we come back in the next tutorial, we're going to look at actually moving some stuff around. We're going to move our ellipse and our rectangle and make them move across the screen. Alright, see you then.